could argue in the developed countries, the big winners are countries that have shrinking populations. Okay, that's something that most people never talked about. You know, we always used to think shrinking population is a cause for negative growth. But in my conversations with the leadership of these large developed countries that have xenophobic immigration policies, they don't allow anybody to come in, shrinking unemployment, shrinking demographics, these countries.
Okay, I'm gonna tell you all about how I read people. The stuttering's a big giveaway, but the glance into the side, facial expressions, the gaslighting, you know, all of that, where I'm not too familiar with this guy. I've heard his name before, I've heard of BlackRock before and all that, but like instantly bullshit, right? Just anybody who pays attention to body language and to people just immediately know this guy's full of shit in some way. Maybe not, right? The average normie might not catch this, but introduce y'all to Sheepy. She's got an interesting take on dog culture, and this video is not going to be about dog culture, don't worry. But she talks about other things, which I'm very, very interested in the things she's brought up so far in just the 2 videos I've watched. She's only got a few. I think she's only got like 10 videos, but that's fine. I'm gonna listen to more eventually. But when this man, the absolute second this man began talking about, when he began framing shrinking, you know, first world, like we've had a population decline in first world countries for a while now, right? With the millennials and the Gen Xers not having enough children. I've talked about that before. It's like the baby boomers just raised a bunch of children who are very anti-child, and this dog culture has a lot to do with that. Although, like I said, I'm not going to get into that too much because that's not what I really want to talk about. But the minute this clown started reframing the low birth rates as a good thing, I knew it. I knew he was going to begin talking about xenophobia. He was going to start talking about mass immigration and how it's a good thing and a sort of a cure-all. I just knew it. Like, I just had that vibe immediately that he was going to talk about immigration in some way. So, shout out to Sheepy. She seems like a cool chick so far. I've had an interesting conversation with her in her comments. She seems really open and nice. But I get very opinionated very quickly. And it can come off as aggression sometimes, but I'm just, like I said, I'm just very passionate about the way I see the world, and I'm open to people's ideas of the world as well, to other people's ideas, and I always consider it. Like, for instance, just to give an example, I hate dogs, right? That guy IHD, not him and I, but like I know the guy, but I disagree when he doesn't do this too often, where he starts talking about race and white people or blacks or whatever. When he begins kind of getting into that is when I start like tuning out, because it's like, I don't believe in the race crap. And this is coming from a little Hispanic boy from South Texas, okay? And it's sad that I have to say that out loud, but it seems like the only kind of merit you can have is if you're not white, and that's a fucking shame. All right? Or in a lot of cases, you have to be a woman. If you're a white male, you can't have an opinion about things, essentially. That's just the way the world's working. I don't want to hear any crap about how it's not like that. It is like that. Like, any white dudes in my audience, y'all know, okay? And it's a fucking shame. But anyway, I have to preface this with saying, like, I'm Hispanic from South Texas, born in that Mexican culture, that northern Mexican South Texas culture. And it's a culture, man. Like, South Texas is its own little country, its own little world. And a lot of y'all don't know that because you've never been there or experienced it, but I'm telling you, South Texas is its own little miniature country. Alright? So, with that said, I don't agree with this race thing that gets brought up sometimes, where it's always kind of framed, and IHD's he kind of laid off this, I think, and maybe because of my comments, because anytime he brings it up, I'll be the first person to put a timestamp and talk about it, because To me, it's important to talk about, but you don't reply to me, which is fine, dude. Like, don't reply to me. I don't give a fuck. You don't want to hear it. You don't have to listen. Don't read my post. Just block me. I don't care. But it's one of those things. Like, no hard feelings. I'm still sub to him. I still like the guy. I think like I said before in other videos, I'd have a beer with him. Like, I'd hang out with this dude. We're going to disagree about things, but it doesn't mean I don't like you. You know what I'm saying? But to get back on topic, I left a comment. I'm just gonna go over my comment. That'd be the easiest thing to do. But timestamped it and pretty much said what I just said. Words like xenophobic, or in a lot of cases xenophobia, are intended to mislead, a red herring of sorts. Japan, for instance, is being pressured to let more Indian immigrants into their country in order to solve the birth rate problem. Not just Japan, but all Western countries are being subverted in this way. They also reframe a country as being ethically monolithic as a negative, as if to say people who prefer to be around others that share their own culture is some sin. The blacks and the whites, and it seems like I'm going on a tangent here, and I kinda am, but when I started talking about this, it made me think of this. So this is why it seems like maybe I'm going off on a tangent, but to me this all relates to the destruction, right? Like the dog culture is part of that destruction as well. That's the way I view it, and that's why I'm into this weird dog culture thing, this dog cult that's going on right now. That's why I'm interested in it, just to be transparent. And you know, to top it off, I don't like dogs, so it works out perfectly for me. Continue reading. The blacks and the whites in the USA post-World Wars. The blacks and the whites in the US post-World War shared a commonality, which I would call being a patriot. And they got along for decades until the divisive politicians like Jesse Jackson and those creatures began spewing their hatred. I'm a Hispanic born and raised in South Texas, and I was instilled with the notion that Hispanics and the Tejanos were the white farmers. In case y'all don't know, Tejanos, like the Texans, were the white farmers who learned to husband from the land from the Mexicans, were allies in the building of South Texas and the overall economic growth of Texas as a whole. This all goes back to the Mexican-American War, which was a fight for land that both the northern Mexicans and the Tejanos did something with. So in other words, they did something with that land that wasn't occupied, and the Mexicans and the Caucasians, or whoever, the whites, which is probably comprised of the Irish, the Scottish, and the British, those kind of people who were kind of a melting pot to begin with. So they did something with the land, right? And you got this dictator from Mexico named Antonio Lopez de Santa Anna, who got wind of this and basically said, well, if you let them on there for too long, eventually they're going to claim the land for their own, and that's what they did. Santa Anna didn't like that, so he marched up with his army and started taking over. He started taking over bases. Y'all heard of the Alamo, right? With Davy Crockett and William B. Travis. It's William B. Travis, that's right. Who was I thinking of? So we have guys like... Back to it. You have guys like, famous heads like Davy Crockett and William Travis and all those people. Maybe y'all don't know who William Travis is, but Davy Crockett, y'all know Davy Crockett, right? Fucking Billy Bob Thornton and what was the other guy's name? The other actor, what the fuck's his name? John Wayne. Yep. So you got, this is another topic, but Davy Crockett played by John Wayne, and then almost as a joke, later on played by freaking Billy Bob Thornton. What a downgrade, man. What a joke. Anyway, you got all that famous heads like that who fought in the Alamo, who were fighting against a dictator. Like, you want to, depending on your perspective, right? The Mexicans, the military under Santa Anna's command were the invaders invading up north, to where the Tejanos and the native Mexicans were establishing themselves. They're establishing colonies, not necessarily for America, but just living off the land, right? They weren't really pro-American. They were kind of neutral. And once it was like a flashpoint, right? People in the Alamo got slaughtered because it was like kind of like a last stand in a way. But I digress. Let's get back on it. The president of Mexico didn't like this, so he began his conquest of that northern region of Mexico. But the reframing from the controllers, which is mainly propagated by the universities, the mainstream media, and other institutions, are attempting to rewrite history and gaslighting the people into believing that the Mexican-American War was about slavery. It wasn't, and that those evil darn whites were just wanted more slaves. I know it may seem unrelated, but the retelling of history is all part of this all part of this twisted narrative and depopulation in order to divide the West. They'll call countries like Japan xenophobic unfairly just because they want to stick to their own kind. I understand that Japan isn't technically part of the West, but they're still Westernified. Westernified? Westified or Westernified? I'm not sure how you'd say that. To the controllers, they're part of the problem. Japan's part of the problem. And I kind of learned about this Indian invasion thing recently about Japan, and I thought that was really interesting. I gotta research that a little more before I really talk about it to make it sound like I know what I'm talking about. So I don't want to spew any, falsehoods about that. Fake news. Also, the true history of the Mexican-American War is something you can't Google. Google results all give the same narrative of it was because of slavery. The revisionist history will say that it was the Americans. The revisionist history will say that it was Americans that were invading, and they weren't. White farmers and the native Mexicans cooperated to build part of northern Mexico into a fertile utopia, and it was the Mexican government that attempted a land grab. Whites, blacks, and Mexicans were all allied in that area. So basically, as a kid, my junior high Texas history teacher was a very passionate person. I've talked about him before. Where he would frame it. Now, we can take this into consideration, right? He's a government worker, but the way he would frame it is that blacks, whites, and Mexicans, they all got along in that area and built Texas to what it was. Like that, northern part of Mexico that became South Texas eventually. And you won't hear this narrative from anybody else because it's being, like, this history is being erased. If you Google what caused the Mexican-American War, let's do that right now. Oh, I actually drove over the Nueces River every day. Sectional politics within the U.S. regarding slavery also played a role as Texas was admitted as a slave state. And I'm telling y'all right now, just because a whole state is a slave state doesn't mean that there were just slaves everywhere. Alright? Just because a state has a certain rule or a certain law doesn't mean that it's just worldwide. For instance, let's use this as an example. It's going to seem like a weird example, but let's say, for instance, bestiality. Just because bestiality is legal in some states doesn't mean that everybody's having sex with animals. Okay? It's going to seem like a weird example, but I think it's a perfect example. Just because Texas at the time was a slave state, quote unquote, doesn't mean that everybody had slaves in Texas. And this is the bullshit. This is the absolute fucking horseshit that gets thrown out into the public consciousness, right? Because everybody's a bunch of dolts, they're a bunch of dingbat idiots. Mexico did not recognize Texas as a legitimate American territory, and Texas' admission to the United States antagonized Mexican officials and citizens. We can scratch the citizens parts out and just say Mexican government right here. You can put that out, but they want to put citizens to make it seem like everybody was upset. So it's all about colonialism, right? America's desire for westward expansion. And but we don't frame it as Mexico's desire for northern expansion, right? We leave that part out and insert this part because it sounds better. It sounds more anti-white. So the Texans, the Tejanos, right? They'll say Texans, they really mean the Mexicans and the Tejanos. And after a while, the word Tejanos became like this catch-all term for the whites and the Mexicans. Whites were considered this too. Again, you won't hear this from anybody else. So I think that's it, guys, for this. I wanted to cover one more of her videos. Again, I like the way she talks and presents herself. She says unbelievable things that I never considered before. It really got my noggin scratching. It's a real noggin scratcher. What's wrong, Max? Why are you following Arky? Quit being that way. Max does this thing where he'll latch onto Arky's neck and won't let him go, and I have to break him up every time. Arky's like a little gay boy. He's a little powdered donut. I love him. He's the best. Let's see here.
Any type of support whatsoever, really. A lot of them are suffering from mental health. There's counter on the street are actually to some extent to these kids.
So here, Sheepy goes over this this idea of foster children.
who have experienced abuse and neglect.
It's just like kind of sad. I mean, you don't really know what happened to all of them. And
Okay. Probably nothing. Probably nothing serious happened to them. Or if it did, like, at the end of the day, it's not really an issue that human society needs to focus so much attention on because they're dogs. Okay? What happened to
Oh yeah, and just to like give a little history of what this video is about. This is these two little girls had a fundraiser. I don't know if what they were selling might have been like lemonade or some shit. I really don't remember, but I don't feel like going through the whole thing. But these little girls raising money for like, man, what was the term for basically like shelter dogs. They're raising money for shelter dogs to like give them toys. I think they raised like $50, but and what the upsetting part about it is that these little kids may have not been their idea. It may have been the idea of the adults around them, because when it comes to children are always reflections of what their parents are, and if their parents are a bunch of dog nutters, that's gonna reflect in them. So it's not really their idea. They're just kind of indoctrinated into this culture, right? Instead of like doing a fundraiser for a better cause, like for instance Sheepy says, for maybe raising money to buy toys for foster children, okay? Instead of something like that, they always go to the dog nuttery or something similar. Something that don't really fucking matter. Like the dog isn't gonna appreciate you, the dog don't care, right? Just to preface what's going on.
we know what happened probably in a lot of cases, at least to some extent, to these kids who have experienced abuse and neglect. Something else I want to point out that I found out recently, because the girls were saying how sad it is because these dogs are from the street. Well, I have read that a lot of the homeless people you encounter on the street are actually children, are homeless because they aged out of foster care. So once they hit 18, there's no longer these foster care situations or,
This is the part that blew me away, because I don't know, it's not like it's the case of not being exposed to it, right? So that wowed me. I was like, whoa, like you're onto something. Wow. It's something super important to consider. So let's go ahead and let her finish.
any type of support whatsoever, really. A lot of them are suffering from mental health and drug abuse issues because they're victims of abuse and neglect. Where are the massive amounts of institutions and where are the news reports and the fundraisers for these actually neglected and abused children? Where is the support for them once they age out of foster care? You know, they're on the street. Why isn't that? Why is no one telling these girls to be sad about that? You know.
So when it comes to child protective services, it's again, I've talked about government and their institutions, like the educational system, for instance, colleges, universities. They're all fucked up and corrupt in some way. Police officers, etc. The only pure one that probably exists is the fire department, and that's kind of nutty. But I'm sure you can find some bullshit about fire departments, but that's not the point. CPS is a government agency, and ain't no telling how corrupt that is. Ain't no telling if there's human trafficking involved with those institutions. Hey Max, what's up, dude? No jumping. Turn my keyboard off before he started stepping on it. Hey dude, what's up? It's the boy right here. Max jumped on my desk. But when it comes to agencies like CPS or these foster agencies, right? They're all government ran. So these institutions are government ran. And anything ran by the government is usually a sinkhole for taxpayer money. It always is, no matter what. It's always bloated in some way, or funds are being embezzled, or they're not being allocated properly, or whatever. It's just always the case, okay? So that being said, I don't trust the statistics 100% or the narrative actually. I'm not doubting Sheepy. If Sheepy's watching, I think she's subbed to me. I'm not doubting you specifically. I'm saying that these numbers may be a little exaggerated, may be skewed a little bit just because of the corruption involved, right? I'm not saying their children are being abused. I'm not saying that at all. I'm sure I know it's out there, okay? And it's heartbreaking. But I never considered this idea that the youngsters who get pushed through the foster system, right? And I guarantee it, these institutions, these agencies, they just wait for the day that they turn 18 so they can kick them out, so they can feel all good about themselves about fostering children, right? CPS agents, they feel so good about taking abused children away from their parents and away from their fathers. And human beings are flawed. This is my point as well. Like, human beings are flawed. These agents, these CPS agents are people, okay? They make mistakes, they make assumptions, they have biases. You got a lot of them out there that are very anti-father, very, very, very anti-man, anti-father, and that's a problem as well. And it's just twisted. It's hard to find truth when it comes to these institutions because they're ran by people, and people are full of biases and full of flaws and full of bullshit, okay? So, but this is a callback. This foster thing is terrible, because they just push them through the foster system, and when they're 18, it's just like they just, oh well, you're homeless now. That's incredibly saddening, because these 18-year-olds may still be children because they've never had the love of the father or the love of the mother. They're disconnected from God, right? And a lot of times they lose faith in God. And I know it's not necessarily we're talking about God here, but this is what, for example, this is what happened to me when my father died. It's like at that moment I lost faith in God. So I know what that separation feels like. All right, so to get into my comment, sorry for the double comment. Awesome comment. I mean that. Like, I was blown away. Like, I was at work. I had to stop what I was doing and go sit down somewhere and type this out because I was like blown away. So to get on to read the comment, you're quite literally the only person I've seen online or otherwise that has spoken about this. To give a quick example that's in a similar vein, my daughter has a friend from Guatemala who cannot read English nor her native language, but she's still being pushed through the education system. I said in a presentation before how the crooked public education institution doesn't give a crap and will continue to push her up the grade so that she'll be out of sight, out of mind. Your story about foster youngsters who are forgotten about once they're 18 is similar. They don't care about this little girl and how she'll struggle as an adult. They only care about keeping their jobs so that they can later virtue signal about how they're such great educators who care about youngsters. Complete garbage human beings. And I mean that. Like, I mean that with all of my soul. Terrible people that run these agencies and these institutions. They just love it. They love to feel good about themselves, helping the poor children, right? They don't give a fuck about these children. They really don't. They give zero fucks. They can count the number of fucks they give on one hand. And just to add on to that, they're also being taught a lesson. When I say they, I'm talking about the little girls, the two young girls that were raising money for dogs. They're also being taught that it's more important to virtue signal to actually do something useful, because they had a little news story about them, right? So little egos get inflated. We're starting to teach them all about ego, starting to teach them about virtue signaling, and like all the bullshit that parents are supposed to be protecting their children from. You know, the mother and father, or the father mainly, who builds the ark for their children, for their family, so that they can be protected from these ideas, protected from the world. Maybe not protected from the ideas, because I do think it's important for them to be exposed to this illusion of ego satisfaction, this virtue signaling, which is really what it is. Virtue signaling is ego satisfaction. You can watch a little bit of it.
I don't blame these girls at all for this. These,
Oh, they did a lemonade instead.
Using money they raised from selling lemonade to buy toys for dogs at a local shelter. Sixth graders Ava and Maddie
shout out to them.
I just think this is sad. Obviously, don't blame these girls at all for this. These, kids have the desire, I think, to do good most of the time. I think that's kind of an innate thing.
Yeah, I believe that too, but I think what ultimately kind of overrides that, what supersedes that desire to do good, is the desire to impress the parents, impress the adults around them. Do you have all the adults around them that are telling them that they're doing a good thing, quote unquote? So that's really where this stems from, truly. Because think back to your own childhood. I'm talking to Sheepy. I'm talking to my audience, but Sheepy is watching. I think maybe if she is, cool. Thank you. But if you think back to your own childhood with your own parents, and I don't know if you had both your mother and your father in your life. It's sad that I have to even say that, but let's just go with your mother, for instance. You had to say things to pacify your mother, right? And I don't know your mom, but the things I talk about on my channel, or normally the kind of the psycho way mothers act. And everybody, I don't care who you are on this planet, everybody here has dealt with a psycho mother, okay? So you say things and you do things to pacify your mother or pacify your parents. Let's just say parents. And this is just a huge part of the issue. You're absolutely right about children wanting to do good, but their only examples are the parents and the other adults around them. And like I said, these children are going to be the reflections of those adults and parents, the grandparents, etc., and the extended family.
And they're honest and genuine and very earnest. So I feel like they're an accurate reflection of what this culture is teaching them. The dominant culture in this country now definitely, I think it's irrefutable, holds human beings to a lower level of importance than dogs. And I just think this is extremely sad to see their kind of eagerness to do good and their earnestness and genuine, honest, good-heartedness being wasted like this.
I agree.
Yeah, so let's listen.
What's going on?
IHD, what's up, dude?
This is around the age, and this is ages 11. They're both 11 years old. This is around that age you want.
My daughter's 12, so.
If you think about like their background, like,
And just so y'all know, my daughter's very anti-dog now, and I'm telling you right now, I'm gonna preface this by saying that her and I left a comment in Sheepy's video talking about this as well today. Her and I discovered IHD together because we were watching that cats versus dog video. Let me find it. So I think it might be his regular channel actually. Here we go. This video right here, cat versus dog as pets. Very entertaining. This is like the second video. Shout out to the guy who recommended IHD. I'm not gonna say your name. I know you want to be anonymous. Let me
Dogs
really loud.
are a problem because they are.
Oh, 6 years ago. He sounds so different. Like you can tell he's matured. That's funny. He was in his early 40s in this during this time, I think, or mid 40s. I think he's 50 now.
Control.
Hey, look, it's the
Much more
scarab, dude, on the forehead.
like a human. This behavior
You got a better mic too.
from dogs, to me, is annoying and unacceptable. Dogs also have no respect for boundaries.
Gonna be my thumbnail.
Even if they don't know you, they will walk right up to you and bury their noses
That's loud.
in your crotch,
So,
sniffing all over you. Slow.
and IHD didn't present this as, let's say, a comedy, or he wasn't trying to be necessarily funny, but this is how this got my attention. I was laughing, like her and I, my daughter and I were both laughing at this, but so she ended up subscribing to her on her own. I didn't like press the issue, just kind of left it at that. She subs to him, so we kind of watch more videos together, and as time goes on, you know, she started kind of admitting to me that she doesn't like dogs, and she never really did. She just felt as if like her grandmother kind of pressured her into liking dogs. Like, she has little yappers. But she started saying things to me like, I never really liked touching them or being around them or anything. They made me uncomfortable. And she used to have this like Rottweiler that was kind of unhinged. But the thing's fucking dead, thank God. Knowing what I know now, I probably would have deleted it myself. But it is what it is now. I think it died of heartworms. So she starts saying these things to me, kind of independent of me. Like I wasn't bringing this up, and I'll bring up the dogs thing every now and then, and kind of saying like, hey, I agree with IHD in a lot of points. He makes really good points, and like she kind of understands that. She's starting to learn how to make arguments just from listening to IHD and listen to the way I present things as well. So she's learning slowly how to present evidence and present arguments over time. Okay, so it's been a good thing, but I didn't force this on her. Like I just started watching this guy. I didn't know much about him. We kind of watched him together and kind of came to the same conclusions. And I tell her, I says what I do with her. I tell her all the time. I said, look, just because I don't like dogs doesn't mean you have to don't like dogs. Okay, like if you decide later that you like dogs, that's okay. I'm not gonna hold it against you. Okay, so I make it very, very clear that she doesn't have to dislike dogs because of me.
Like, they're like from the streets, some of them, like they're strays.
But in a lot of these cases, and I'm pretty sure like 90% of these cases where the children are this kind of hung up on the dog thing, it's because the parents are crazy. Because the parents are kind of not forcing them, but oh man, what's the word I want to use? Kind of indoctrinating them into this dog culture. Kind of like in the same way the churches do with young people, where they indoctrinate the youngsters into, loving Jesus or worshiping God or whatever. They fill their brains with sugar plums and candy canes when it comes to these topics, when it comes to like Christianity and this dog culture thing. To me, it's the same thing. It's the same exact thing. It's a cult.
Okay, so this is the part I wanted to start getting into a little bit more. I looked up some statistics on the greater Lafayette area.
Okay, she starts talking about, we've already went over that, about the statistics. I already gave my opinion on that.
It's sad because you don't know what happened to them before they got here.
Yep.
So they've been taught to love and feel sorry for dogs simply because they don't know what the dog went through.
Love, even if they're just really nervous and like scared.
Right. They have a lot of energy and they're fun to play with.
A lot of energy.
Do you think that maybe any of these kids would like to have other kids to play with, that aren't also in the foster care system? Do you think maybe there could be some fundraisers to help them get mental health support and counseling that they probably need?
Yeah, I mean, I agree that things we're teaching our children, oh man, like I'm guilty of this too. This is what gets to me as well, where I didn't consider this, where I don't necessarily feel guilty. It's like, you either know or you don't, right? But it's like, man, even I'm kind of not, like I said, not guilty, but made not aware of it, right? And it's nice when someone points out your blind spot a little bit. Dinkwad. I like that word. She used that word dinkwad a lot, and I really like it. I'm gonna start incorporating that into my vernacular. Oh yeah, what got me started on this with older commercials. Golly, I'm gonna have to cover that some other time because it's like freaking 2 a.m. and I'm getting tired. But shout out to Sheepy, cool chick. Hope she don't mind me calling her a chick, but that's just the words I use. Don't take it personal. I know a lot of people don't like that, but a lot of women don't like that. I think we're about the same age. I'm 40. She said she was a child of the 90s when she went over this commercial. This baby born, what is it called? Baby boy? Baby boy? Oh, baby born. This baby born.
Commercial from 1991 in the past.
So that's what kind of started these commercials. And I've talked about old media before, old commercials, just to get into it really quick, where it's like a gateway into the past, a gateway into the old world. And I have a feeling, and Kirk has said this as well in his videos, where I think any videos that are over 10 years old on YouTube are eventually going to get deleted in some way in order to erase this history, like this baby born commercial.
But I touched on it more.
Come see if she'll play it.
Really interesting.
Just look it up myself. I don't know how to type. Here we go.
Poor baby born, please don't cry anymore, 'cause your mommy is here, baby born, baby born. When baby born cries, she's thirsty. Let's give her a bottle. Just like a real baby, she's wet her diaper.
So, I remember this commercial the moment I heard it, so I grew up with this kind of media as well. So her and I are probably around the same age. She may be younger. She sounds younger. She may be older, for all I know. But really, really interesting. Like I'm a huge like fan of these older commercials. I have like a playlist of old commercials I'll watch every now and then, just as background noise while I'm doing other shit on the couch, right? Like I'll turn on YouTube on my TV, on the big TV in the living room, just sit on the couch on my phone and have something in the background. Sometimes I'll have old commercials from the 70s, 80s, 90s. Because I kind of like grew up on this, like this was my childhood, and it's unfortunate to say that because so many parents, especially baby boomer parents, I know Sheepy, you got baby boomer parents, you have to have baby boomer parents, who just sat us in front of a TV and just let the television raise us, right? So we got all of our morals and values from this era, which is a good or bad thing, because millennials, the other millennials I've met and have to deal with, seem very, very narcissistic and kind of self-centered, and I've always wondered why. And I think it's because I was raised on kind of older media. Like I was raised on media from like the 80s. You know what I mean? I think I act more like a Gen Xer than I do a millennial. And Gen Xers are a lot different than millennials. Millennials, like I said, very self-centered, narcissistic. Not all of them, but for the most part, right? Because they learned it from their boomer parents. But typical boomer children were raised on television, and very rarely had conversations with their children. You know, my mother, she'd had conversations with me. Not gonna lie, about a few things. But I think that's it, y'all. 40-minute video. I'll probably get this down to 35. Start editing it. It's gonna take a while, but I want to cover more. The Juneteenth reflection thing. Just to give y'all a heads up, I think Juneteenth is a nonsense, made-up holiday. And again, being a little Hispanic boy from South Texas, I have my reasons for that I won't get into in this video because it's getting late. But I'm already telling you, Juneteenth is just another trick, just another bullshit holiday like Cinco de Mayo that is designed to divide and conquer. Like, this race shit is nonsense. The whole idea of race itself, the whole concept, is meant to divide God's children, people like you and me. This race crap don't matter to me at all. I don't even want to hear it, to be honest. It's so nasty. Like, you want to talk about Satan's tricks? Dividing the races was probably the biggest trick of them all. And you have demons like Jesse Jackson and all of that. What's another one? Martin Luther King Jr. He's another demon I don't like either. Because they're the ones that attempted to reframe American history. But like I said, I don't want to get into that now. It's okay if y'all don't agree with me. I'm just telling you. I've laid out my rationale when it comes to race many, many times in my videos. Go look up my Cinco de Mayo video. It's somewhere. I think it was in 2023 that I did it. Yeah, May 2023, Cinco de Mayo, where I go over that bullshit holiday. And that shouldn't be a holiday either. It's a bullshit holiday. Like I said, it's a fake holiday that doesn't mean anything. Just like Juneteenth. Isn't that fun? You have a great day.